The 2026 crash didn't just destroy the old economic system, it destroyed the global order that had existed since 1945. The network of alliances, institutions, trade relationships, and power structures that defined international relations for 8 decades collapsed, along with the financial markets. What's emerging in its place is not chaos, though it appeared that way initially. A new global order is taking shape, different from what came before, more fragmented, more regional, more contested, less stable, but perhaps more realistic. Understanding this new order is essential for navigating the post-crash world. The old order was based on certain assumptions: American hegemony, free trade and capital flows, multilateral institutions, international law, nuclear stability, and broad cooperation on global issues. Every one of those assumptions has been invalidated. The new order operates on different principles entirely. Let me show you exactly what this new global order looks like, how it's structured, why it emerged this way, and what it means for nations, regions, and individuals trying to survive and thrive in the post-crash world. The most fundamental change is the end of American global dominance. The United States has been the world's hegemon since 1945 and the sole superpower since 1991. The 2026 crash exposed the limits of American power and shattered the unipolar world. America's economic dominance evaporated. The dollar remains the largest reserve currency, but is no longer the undisputed global standard. The U.S. economy contracted severely in the crash. Debt levels became unsustainable. Fiscal and monetary policy credibility was destroyed by failed crisis response. American economic might, which underpinned hegemony, diminished dramatically. The dollar's role as global reserve currency is fragmenting. Countries are diversifying reserves away from dollars. Bilateral trade is increasingly settling in other currencies, or barter. The dollar still matters, but doesn't dominate as before. The exorbitant privilege of printing the world's reserve currency is ending. American military power remains substantial, but is less relevant. Military might matters less when economic power declines. The U.S. can't afford to maintain forces globally. Bases are closing, commitments are being reduced. The security umbrella America provided to allies is retracting. Countries must provide for their own security. American political dysfunction destroyed soft power. The world watched as the U.S. political system failed to respond effectively to the crisis. Gridlock, partisanship, incompetence. The American model, which once attracted admiration and imitation, now repels. No one wants to copy a system that failed so visibly. American cultural influence is waning. Hollywood struggles. Tech platforms fragment by region. American media is less dominant. The cultural hegemony that accompanied economic and military power is declining. American soft power no longer shapes global preferences and values. The result is a world without a hegemon. No single power dominates. American influence remains substantial in some regions and domains, but isn't global. This is new. The post-1945 world always had a hegemon. First, clearly the US, then the US as sole superpower. Now there is none. This absence defines the new order. In the absence of a global hegemon, the world is organizing into regional blocs. Geography matters again. Proximity determines relationships more than ideology or economics. The new order is regional, not global. The North American bloc is forming around the United States, Canada, and Mexico. USMCA, which replaced NAFTA, has become more than a trade agreement. It's becoming a security and resource alliance, energy integration, manufacturing coordination, border management. The three economies are fusing into a regional system. This integration isn't from choice, but necessity. The US needs Canadian resources and Mexican manufacturing. Canada needs American markets and security. Mexico needs American capital and technology. Mutual dependence in a fragmenting world creates integration. The North American bloc is more closed to outsiders, more internally focused, more coordinated in policy. The European bloc is fragmenting even as it integrates in some ways. The Eurozone faces existential stress. Southern European debt is unsustainable. Northern European willingness to subsidize the South is exhausted. The euro may not survive in current form. Currency fragmentation within Europe is possible. But Europe is integrating in security and resources. NATO matters more as American security guarantees become uncertain. European military coordination is increasing. Energy cooperation is essential given Russian supply cuts. The EU may fracture economically while integrating in security. A strange hybrid structure is emerging. The Eastern European and Baltic states are forming their own sub-bloc within Europe. They face direct Russian threats. They can't depend on Western Europe for security. They're coordinating military procurement and deployment. Poland is emerging as the regional power. The old East-West Europe divide is reappearing in new form. The Asian bloc is dominated by China, but faces internal tensions. China's economic power in Asia is enormous. Belt and Road relationships create dependencies. But many Asian nations fear Chinese dominance. They're balancing between Chinese economic power and American-Japanese security cooperation. ASEAN is trying to maintain autonomy between great powers. Singapore, Vietnam, Indonesia, Thailand, they need Chinese trade but fear Chinese control. They want American security presence but can't alienate China. The balancing act is increasingly difficult. Some will choose sides. Others will try to remain neutral. The Eurasian bloc is forming around Russia and Central Asia. Russia, weakened economically but still resource-rich, is the center. Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and other Central Asian states are in Moscow's orbit by necessity and proximity. China has influence, but Russia dominates politically and militarily. This bloc is the least economically dynamic but resource-rich. Oil, gas, minerals, agricultural land, the resources the world needs. The bloc is using resource leverage to extract political concessions and economic benefits. Resource nationalism defines the Eurasian bloc's strategy. The Middle Eastern configuration remains fluid. Traditional alliances are shifting. The Saudi-Iranian relationship is evolving. Turkey is pursuing its own regional ambitions. Israel faces a changed strategic environment. No stable order has emerged. The region remains contested between local powers, with external powers having reduced influence. Africa is fragmenting into sub-regional blocs. West Africa, East Africa, Southern Africa, North Africa. Each region is developing its own dynamics. External power influence is declining. Europe can't project power effectively. China is retrenching. African regions are more autonomous, but also more isolated and less developed. Latin America is splitting between a northern bloc oriented toward North America and a southern bloc that's more independent. Colombia, Central America, and Caribbean Basin are integrating with North America. Brazil, Argentina, Chile are forming a southern cone bloc. Venezuela and Cuba are isolated. Regional coherence is low. Trade in the new global order operates on completely different principles than the pre-crash system. Free trade is dead. Managed trade is the norm. Security considerations override economic efficiency. Bilateral and regional trade agreements replace multilateral frameworks. The WTO is irrelevant. Countries negotiate directly with major partners. The agreements prioritize security of supply over cost efficiency, redundancy over optimization. Each agreement creates preferences and barriers. Trade is weaponized routinely, export controls on critical goods, import restrictions for political reasons, sanctions as standard foreign policy tool. Trade is no longer assumed to be mutually beneficial cooperation. It's a domain of competition and leverage. Economic warfare is normal, not exceptional. Strategic goods face extreme restrictions. Semiconductors, rare earths, pharmaceuticals to advanced machinery, food and energy. Countries hoard or restrict exports of anything strategically valuable. The free flow of strategic goods has ended. Access requires political relationships, not just market prices. Supply chain resilience determines trade patterns. Countries trade with partners they consider reliable, even if more expensive. Diversification is mandatory. Multiple sources for critical inputs. Domestic production of essentials. The efficiency of concentrated supply chains is sacrificed for security of dispersed chains. Shipping and logistics are balkanized. Container shipping routes fragment by region. Airlines serve regional markets primarily. Cross-regional movement of goods is difficult and expensive. The global logistics network that enabled worldwide trade has regionalized. Moving goods between blocs is challenging. Currency fragmentation complicates trade. Without dollar dominance, currency risk is high. Bilateral trade often uses non-traditional settlement, barter, commodity backing, regional currencies, even cryptocurrency. The mechanics of trade are more complex and expensive. Trade volumes are permanently lower than pre-crash levels. Maybe 60-70% of 2025 volumes. This isn't cyclical. The political will and economic structures for high trade volumes don't exist. Countries are less open, more protectionist, more focused on self-sufficiency. Trade exists, but is constrained. The effect is lower global efficiency, but higher regional resilience. Production is less optimized, but more secure. Costs are higher, but supply is more reliable. The trade-off between efficiency and resilience has shifted decisively toward resilience. The international institutions that govern the old order are either defunct or transformed beyond recognition. New institutions are emerging, but they're regional, not global. The United Nations remains as a form, but has no authority. Security Council is deadlocked permanently. General Assembly resolutions are ignored. UN peacekeeping is minimal, no one funds it. The UN exists, but doesn't matter. It's a zombie institution, technically alive, but functionally dead. The IMF and World Bank face irrelevance. They lack resources for the scale of current problems. Their conditionality is rejected by borrowers with alternatives. China's development banks rival their influence. The Bretton Woods institutions that managed global finance for 80 years are peripheral. Regional development banks gain importance. Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, European Investment Bank. These regional institutions have resources and legitimacy in their regions. Development finance is regional, not global. The WTO has collapsed in all but name. Dispute resolution doesn't function. Countries ignore rulings. New trade negotiations are impossible. The multilateral trading system it represented is dead. Trade is managed bilaterally or regionally. The WTO is a historical artifact. The international institutions that govern the old order are either defunct or transformed beyond recognition. New institutions are emerging, but they're regional, not global. The United Nations remains as a forum, but has no authority. Security Council is deadlocked permanently. General Assembly resolutions are ignored. UN peacekeeping is minimal. No one funds it. The UN exists, but doesn't matter. It's a zombie institution, technically alive, but functionally dead. The IMF and World Bank face irrelevance. They lack resources for the scale of current problems. Their conditionality is rejected by borrowers with alternatives. China's development banks rival their influence. The Bretton Woods institutions that managed global finance for 80 years are peripheral. Regional development banks gain importance. Asian Development Bank, African Development Bank, Inter-American Development Bank, European Investment Bank. These regional institutions have resources and legitimacy in their regions. Development finance is regional, not global. The WTO has collapsed in all but name. Dispute resolution doesn't function. Countries ignore rulings. New trade negotiations are impossible. The multilateral trading system it represented is dead. Trade is managed bilaterally or regionally. The WTO is a historical artifact. NATO is transforming from a US-led alliance to a European security organization. American commitments are reducing. European nations are increasing defense spending and coordination. The alliance may survive, but with different purpose and structure. It's becoming European-centric, not Atlantic. New regional security organizations are forming. An Asian security framework excluding the US is discussed. Middle Eastern countries are creating their own security dialogues. Latin American security cooperation is increasing. Security is organizing regionally because global security architecture has failed. International law is increasingly ignored. Treaties are violated without consequence. Maritime law is selectively followed. The International Criminal Court is powerless. The legal order that constrained state behavior has broken down. Power and interest determine behavior more than law. The effect is a world with weak global governance and stronger regional governance. Each region develops its own institutions and rules. The commonality between regions decreases. The fragmentation is institutional, not just economic and political. The monetary system is perhaps the most visibly transformed aspect of the new global order. The dollar-centric system has been replaced by monetary pluralism and instability. Multiple reserve currencies coexist. The dollar remains largest, but shares reserve status with the euro, yuan, and even some regional currencies. Central banks hold diversified reserves. No single currency dominates. The benefits and burdens of reserve status are distributed. The yuan is rising, but hasn't replaced the dollar. China's capital controls and political system limit yuan adoption. But in Asian trade, the yuan is increasingly used. Belt and road transactions settle in yuan. China's trade partners hold yuan reserves. Regional yuan dominance without global dominance. Cryptocurrency has gained legitimacy by necessity. When fiat currencies prove unstable, alternatives emerge. Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are used for international settlement where trust is low. Countries that distrust each other's currencies use crypto as neutral settlement. It's volatile, but no government controls it. Commodity-backed currencies are re-emerging. Some proposals link currency to oil, gold, or basket of commodities. The idea is to provide stability that fiat currencies lack. Whether these succeed is uncertain, but the experimentation shows loss of faith in pure fiat money. Gold's role has resurged dramatically. Central banks are accumulating gold. Citizens hoard gold. International settlements sometimes involve gold. The demonetization of gold that occurred over the 20th century is partially reversing. Gold isn't currency, but it's money again. Bilateral currency agreements proliferate. China-Russia trade settles in yuan and rubles. India-UAE trade settles in rupees and dirhams. Countries bypass the dollar directly. Each bilateral relationship may have its own currency arrangement. The system is fragmented and complex. Currency volatility is extreme and persistent. Without a stable anchor, exchange rates fluctuate wildly. This makes trade more expensive and risky. Currency hedging is essential but expensive. The monetary instability is a constant friction on economic activity. Capital controls are universal. Every country restricts capital flows to some degree. The free movement of capital that characterized the pre-crash era is over. Capital is trapped nationally or regionally. This reduces efficiency, but increases stability. Countries retain control over their financial systems. The result is a monetary system that's more stable regionally, but less stable globally. More resilient to single-point failures, but more fragmented and inefficient. The benefits of a unified global currency system are lost. The costs of fragmentation are paid daily. Great power competition defines the new global order more than cooperation or institutions. The US, China, Russia, and regional powers compete for influence, resources, and security in a zero-sum environment. US-China relations are adversarial, but not yet violent conflict. Trade between them has collapsed 60-70%. Technology decoupling is nearly complete. Military tensions are high in Asia, but both countries recognize that war would be catastrophic. The relationship is Cold War without the superpower dominant structure. China faces severe internal challenges. Economic model is broken. Debt levels are extreme. Demographics are terrible. Energy dependence is strategic vulnerability. China is powerful but fragile. Its ability to project power globally is limited. It focuses on Asia and Belt and Road regions. Russia is a declining power clinging to resource leverage. Demographics are worse than China's. Economy is small and undiversified, but vast resources and nuclear weapons give it influence. Russia uses energy exports as geopolitical weapon. It's disruptive but not constructive. India is rising but slowly. Population is growing. Economy is expanding from low base, but infrastructure is inadequate. Governance is challenging. India is a regional power in South Asia, an Indian Ocean, but not yet a great power globally. Its trajectory is up, but the pace is modest. Turkey is attempting regional power status in Middle East and Central Asia. Success is uncertain. Turkey has ambitions that exceed capabilities, but in a fragmented world, medium powers have more autonomy. Turkey is playing a dangerous game but might achieve regional influence. Brazil aspires to lead South America but lacks capacity. Economic problems are severe. Political instability is high. Brazil remains most influential Latin American country but can't unite the region. It's a major regional player without being a great power. The European Union, if it holds together, could be a great power. Combined European economy and population are substantial, but political unity is lacking. Europe is influential, but not as a single actor. It's a collection of medium powers with some coordination. The competition between these powers is more regional than global. Each power has a sphere where it's dominant or influential. US in North America, China in East Asia, Russia in Eurasia, India in South Asia. The competition is at the boundaries of these spheres and over resources and strategic positions. The competition is complicated by non-state actors, terrorist organizations, criminal cartels, multinational corporations, cyber groups. These actors operate across borders and sometimes rival state power. States compete with each other while also dealing with non-state challenges. The lack of a hegemon means no power can impose order. Each power can disrupt, but none can organize globally. The competition produces instability and occasional conflicts, but not world war. The balance is precarious, but it holds because no one can win a general war. Resource competition is the most dangerous aspect of the new global order. As resources become scarcer and more expensive, controlling them becomes existential. Resource conflicts risk escalating to wider wars. Energy resources are the primary flashpoint. Oil and gas reserves are geographically concentrated. Middle East, Russia. Venezuela, that a handful of regions control what everyone needs. Energy importers are vulnerable. Energy exporters have leverage. Conflicts over energy access and pricing are constant. Water is becoming a strategic resource. Transboundary rivers are contested, India-Pakistan over Indus, Egypt-Ethiopia over Nile, Central Asia over Amu Darya and Sir Darya. As water scarcity worsens with climate change, these disputes intensify. Water wars are increasingly possible. Rare earth minerals critical for technology are concentrated in China. This gives China enormous leverage over any country needing advanced technology. Efforts to develop alternative sources are underway, but take years. In the meantime, China can withhold access for political purposes. Agricultural land is contested. Countries with surplus land, Russia, Brazil, parts of Africa, have leverage over food importing countries. Land grabs and neo-colonial arrangements are increasing. Food security requires either domestic production or reliable partners with farmland. Fisheries are being depleted and fought over. Exclusive economic zones are violated. Fishing fleets are escorted by naval vessels. The ocean's resources are being extracted unsustainably while nations compete for what remains. Maritime conflicts are increasing. The Arctic is opening due to ice melt and becoming contested. Resources underneath got new shipping routes. Strategic military positions, Russia, US, Canada, Nordic countries all claiming interests. No agreed governance framework. Potential for conflict is high. Resource competition creates alliances of convenience. Resource-poor countries ally with resource-rich ones. Technology for resources, security for energy. These alliances are transactional rather than ideological. They're unstable, but currently necessary for both parties. The resource competition risks military conflict. Historically, resource scarcity has driven wars. The new global order has multiple resource flashpoints. The absence of strong international law and institutions means conflicts are more likely to turn violent. Technology competition is increasingly divorced from economic competition. Technology is about strategic advantage and control more than profit or efficiency. Semiconductor technology is the key battlefield. Advanced chip manufacturing determines AI capability, military systems, and economic competitiveness. Only a few countries can produce cutting-edge chips. Access is restricted. Chip technology is weaponized routinely. AI development is a great power competition. Whoever leads in AI has military and economic advantages. US and China are competing intensely. Europe is behind, but trying. AI development is state-supported and strategically directed. Private sector still exists, but serves national strategy. Biotechnology is increasingly controlled. Gene editing, synthetic biology, bioweapons potential, pandemic prevention and response. Countries restrict technology sharing. Biological research is securitized. The open science model is ending in strategic fields. Quantum computing is recognized as strategically critical. Whoever achieves quantum supremacy can break current encryption. All digital security becomes vulnerable. Countries are racing for quantum capability while trying to prevent rivals from achieving it. Cyber capabilities are new military domains. Offensive cyber, defensive cyber. Information warfare. Countries build cyber forces as they build navies. Cyber attacks are routine. Cyber defense is essential. A whole new dimension of conflict has opened. Space technology is being weaponized. Satellites for surveillance and communication are strategic assets. Anti-satellite weapons are being developed. The potential for space conflicts is real. Space, like cyber, is a new domain of great power competition. Technology standards are fragmenting by bloc. Different regions adopt different 5G standards, internet governance, AI ethics frameworks. Technology ecosystems are incompatible between blocs. This reduces efficiency, but increases autonomy and control. Technology transfer is heavily restricted. Export controls on advanced technology. Investment restrictions in strategic sectors. Forced technology transfer is resisted fiercely. Countries hoard technological capabilities and prevent rivals from accessing them. The effect is slower global technological progress, but faster national progress in strategic areas. Innovation is directed by state priorities, not market forces. Technology serves power, not efficiency or welfare. Governance in the new global order is more authoritarian across the spectrum. Even democracies have embraced more state control and surveillance. The crisis has empowered states at the expense of individuals and markets. Democratic backsliding is widespread. Checks and balances are weakened. Executive power is enhanced. Emergency authorities become permanent. Civil liberties are restricted. Surveillance is expanded. The crisis provided justification for measures that become entrenched. Authoritarian systems have tightened control. Digital surveillance, social credit systems. Movement restrictions, information control. The technologies of control have advanced. Authoritarian governments use them extensively. China's model is being studied and sometimes copied. Hybrid regimes are common, electoral but not liberal. Voting happens, but isn't free or fair. Opposition exists, but is constrained. Media operates, but is controlled. Many countries fall in this category. Neither fully democratic nor fully authoritarian. The in-between is the norm. Nationalism is the dominant ideology across regime types. Countries prioritize national interest over international cooperation. Sovereignty over integration. Identity over universalism. Left-right political divisions matter less than nationalist-globalist divisions. Nationalists are winning everywhere. Technocratic governance is increasing. Experts are empowered over politicians in some domains. Central banks have vast authority. Public health agencies gained power during pandemic and kept it. Climate agencies direct major resources. Technocracy reduces democratic accountability but increases state capacity. Military influence in governance is rising. In many countries, military or security services have more power, either directly through military governments or indirectly through security state expansion. The militarization of governance is a global trend. Corruption varies by region but is generally high. Weak institutions, economic stress, and reduced international oversight enable corruption. In some countries, corruption is a feature, not a bug. It's how the system functions. Reform is rare. Accommodation is common. The new governance model prioritizes stability over freedom, security over liberty, collective over individual. This is response to crisis and fear. Whether it's permanent is unclear. But for now, governance globally is more controlled and less free than pre-crash. The new global order taking shape after the 2026 crash is more fragmented, more competitive, more authoritarian, and less stable than the order it replaced. This has profound implications. For individuals, freedom of movement is reduced. Travel between blocs is difficult, migration is restricted. Your citizenship determines your opportunities more than your abilities. Place matters more than talent. Geographic luck is increasingly determinative. For businesses, operating globally is harder. Multiple regulatory frameworks, currency risks. Political risks, expropriation possibilities. Global corporations are retreating to regional operations. Multinational becomes less multi and more national. For investors, diversification is harder but more necessary. Assets are trapped regionally. Cross-border investment is restricted. But concentration in one region or currency is risky. The portfolio construction problem is more difficult with fewer tools. For nations, security requires self-reliance or reliable alliances. Depending on international institutions or norms is naive. Military capacity matters. Resource access matters. Technological capability matters. Small countries must choose sides or get crushed. For humanity, global problems are harder to address. Climate change, pandemic response, nuclear proliferation. These require coordination that the new order makes nearly impossible. The problems are global, but the governance is regional. This gap may be catastrophic. The new order is less just, less efficient, less peaceful than the old order aspired to be. Whether the old order achieved its aspirations is debatable, but at least it tried. The new order doesn't even aspire to universal values or global cooperation. It's realist, regional, zero-sum. This order may be more stable than it appears. Regional blocs can be stable internally, even if relationships between blocs are tense. The Cold War was stable for decades, despite adversarial superpower competition. This new multipolar regionalism might achieve similar stability, or it might collapse into conflict. Resource competition could drive wars. Great power rivalry could escalate. The absence of strong institutions means nothing prevents conflicts. Regional stability could shatter into regional wars. The possibility is real. The new global order after the 2020